Welcome back to the show. Of course, you're watching On the Couch, and I'm your host, Siobhan Clark. And I'm here with Miss Elaine Williams. She is the Executive Director for the Women's Resource Center. Mrs. Williams, I have to ask you, most times people assume that abuse is just directed to the females. But we know that there are many situations where the males are being abused in a relationship. Do you offer advice or services for families in that type of situation?
The thing to remember in answering your question is that abuse is abuse, no matter where it comes from.
Yes.
And you know, we're very aware that when we get a complaint, that there's three sides to the story. There's his side, her side, and the truth.
And the truth.
And it's our responsibility to seek out the truth in the situation. We provide protection orders for women in the case of abuse, but a woman has to actually go through a counseling session before we get to that point of issuing that order, because it's very important that we're not getting in the middle of a three-way play. In a relationship. Our aim is to seek the truth and to provide help if we can. If we can.
So in a situation like that, you would really be providing more of your services, again, directed to the female to help her deal with her issues, the issues that are causing her to be abusive. And what happens with the male?
Not very often, but often males, or sometimes I should say, males do call the Women's Resource Center for the same situation. And what we do, there is, that I am aware of, no service in Bermuda currently for males that are being abused. However, what we do is refer them for counseling at the places that we feel can adequately counsel them. One of those places is the Family Intimacy Center. Mrs. Sadia Bean and her husband, Detroit Bean, provide excellent counseling, and men seem to respond very well. The thing to remember also about abuse, since we're on that point, is that abuse is not just physical. Abuse is emotional. Abuse can be, people can be abused spiritually by, hoarding or lording religion over, the other partner, and that can go both ways as well. That it can be financial, withholding funds. What we find of late is that there are a lot more of the elderly in the community being abused because they're because of the economic situation. So they're younger children,
on their children,
but also the younger children are coming back home. But abusing the elderly as well. There's a lot more in young people where they don't understand what healthy relationships are, whether they've not seen them or not. So it's a very, very complex issue.
Okay. And I have to end our interview, and of course all good things unfortunately come to an end. I invite you to come back to the couch whenever you wish.
Thank you so much.
No, absolutely. But please tell us about the women's leadership. I know that you received a graduate certificate in women's leadership. What is that?
Well, the truth is I'm currently undertaking a graduate certificate in women's leadership.
Well, we're claiming it for you.
Thank you. I need that. I've always been interested in leadership, and our work, as I said at the Women's Resource Center, is about empowering women. In July of last year, I was blessed enough to have been a student in a program in Barbados for a whole month, sponsored by Atlantic Philanthropies. And we studied gender and gender relationships with a perspective of the Caribbean culture. And we talked about how we're conditioned as men and women, and how we relate to one another based on that conditioning. The interesting thing was we explored, where we all came from and how we came over, the diaspora from Africa, and how we had to relate to our masters, and how all of those things have to do with who we are as men and women and how we relate to each other in society. I'm particularly interested in that. I'm also interested in how women relate to each other. We do receive adequate, and one of the reasons that there's so much emphasis on abuse to women is because, as we said, it does occur with men, but it predominantly happens with women.
Yes.
But it's not just men who abuse women abuse women as well. And that, I think, is
Very
probably
often.
for another talk.
Sure. Yes, like I said, you're invited back. And that's definitely a topic that I'd love to talk about. Thank you so much for being a part of On the Couch. Just a few minutes ago, we heard the intro of the show by Mr. Dijon Simons. Did you enjoy that?
It was fabulous, and I'd love to hear it again.
Well, we have a treat for you. Ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you.
Mr. Dijon Simons.
Roses and burnt letters. Is this the letter of the love you divided? Could you see it in storms, in snowstorms and capacities? Could you catch the actuality of the sidewalk tentatives? Or could it be the attention lift that I draw to the floods? Or could it be the story that you left in the fuzz? Roses and burned letters. It's the letter of your conscience. Could it be speaking in a textless subjective of your intentions from the beginning that we even met then? Roses and burned letters. Can you check my scripture? It becomes so biblical. Can you decipher my literature? Roses and burned letters. Something so divine than snowstorm flourish. Could it be a cannibalistic beam that let out your criminal instincts to divide us back into the paper that you inscribed and tied us? So as you combine two, don't find neglection. And if you objected, you're again against my law. So let me check it and be your magistrate in our own judicial system. Can you understand? So as we make now not us to make my being, that inner flame that comes in the letters making, and watch me write to that own type of story. I go and describe you in your textual type flurry. So back to the snowstorm and the sidewalk tinnitus. You left it Nike, but you came back with it. And as you're growing into adolescence, your merch is divided. So can you find me back then in the letters that you subside then? And as you subside the feeling coming down, then can you go back to the meaning and the beliefs that we began with? Or is it back to the roses, Valentine cards and letters? Could you see the snow-floored stories? Could you see your sister?
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Dijon Simons, and very shortly we'll have an interview with him. We just met with Miss Elaine Williams, the Executive Director for the Women's Resource Center. In just a few minutes, we will meet our next guest, Miss Catherine Burns, a nutritional therapist. In just a few minutes, we'll be back with On the Couch.
You know, there are so many different sizes and shapes, and nobody should have to conform to any one particular one. I think one of the things that I really try and focus on when I'm working with people is that it's not about the overall number on the scale. It really is more about your body composition and how your clothes fit.